Hello. Welcome, welcome. No, you weren't first, though. You just weren't first. It's just not. It just... You were not. You were not first. I was doing my best, Tommy impression, if you will. Yeah, so hope everything's going all right. Insert number here, yeah. All right, let us get started. Yeah, so I'm very thirsty for some wild reason that I don't understand. Drink some water. All right, first question, what's the point of a gauge transformation? It's not that there's a point of a gauge transformation, it's that given certain classical laws of physics that we want to hold, like Maxwell's equations, there are gauge transformations that there are transformations that you can make of the underlying fields of the four potential, for example, that if you take one solution to your field equations, or actually, I mean, you could just transform the field equations directly using that gauge transformation and the equations are unchanged. So solutions of the untransformed equations are the same as solutions of the transformed equations. Put another way, if you have a solution of the Maxwell field equation, you have a solution of Maxwell's equations, and then you transform your solution by a gauge transformation, it's still a solution. And that's, so we have to somehow deal with that redundancy. That's the point. Do you have any study tips for an incoming freshman? Go to office hours. If you weren't a physicist, what would you be? Probably a mathematician. That's kind of cheating though, I guess. What happened to Ian last night? Ian's been getting cyber attacked by a Christian or Muslim or some person who was mad at him. Although I think that we can confirm that they are coming from India. They've been harassing me as well, although they don't have my IP address. And I was able to track their location to India. So that's what happened. Do you think physicists figured out the formula to manipulate gravity? You wouldn't tell if you did. Well, we already know how to manipulate gravity. It's like actually really not challenging to manipulate gravity. You just take something and, you take something and move it around. That's manipulating gravity. The trouble is it's hard to do it in a way that has like a significant effect. That's the hard thing, but that's because gravity is really weak and moving things that are heavy are very, very tricky. What does it mean to quantize a field? So basically it means that you break up the field into its Fourier components because the field and its momenta are dual, or typically in classical theory, we take the field and its field momenta to be dual. So then you break it up into Fourier components and then you just promote the field momenta and the field values to operators and impose some quantization conditions and then you're done. Explain a photon and what happens when it hits something. So a photon is just the smallest excitation that you can have of the electromagnetic field. Sorry, one sec, I just got a text message from my former supervisor. Sorry. Right, so it's the smallest excitation that you can make in the electromagnetic field. So that's what a photon is. It's basically, if you think of like an electromagnetic wave as like a wave that propagates, just think of the smallest possible wave you can make. And it's not like that it can get smaller. There's quantum mechanics reasons why it can't get smaller in some sense. And when it hits something, it's absorbed. It's either absorbed or deflected, or it passes through. I'm starting a master's in geophysics. Do you know anything about it? I don't. Sorry about that, but I don't. Can you talk more about Markov chains being used in physics? I wish I could, but I just don't know a lot about Markov chains. Why back to back ask a physicist day? Well, Ask a Physicist seems to be really popular. People like it a lot. So I'm happy to provide the service. And more than that, the peer reviews, I haven't been finding good papers that I want to do lately. Is string theory dead? No, it's not. How rubbing causes static electricity. So things have electrons, and at the surface of the things, there are electrons kind of like out in the surface. And by rubbing, you can kind of pull electrons from one surface to another. What are Planck lengths used for in practicality? I don't know what that question means. It's just a system of units. Like meters, oh, I have a bad echo. Meters are just like, you could ask what are meters used in practicality? It's just a system of units, that's all. How is negative energy feasible in the Penrose process? Well, so the point is that in a black hole's gravitational well, the kinetic energy, how do I want to phrase this? Beyond a black hole's event horizon, kinetic energy can flip signs. Coming out of the video. What video? I don't have a video playing. One sec, let me just shut my door. Maybe that'll help. Right, so beyond a black hole's event horizon, so typically we think of kinetic energy as always being positive, right? It's 1/2 mass times velocity squared. That's like the classical formula. However, beyond a black hole's event horizon, that can change sign. It can become negative. And so if something falls into the event horizon and it acquires negative kinetic energy, then in order to conserve energy everywhere, then the other thing has to have more energy. So you can end up getting energy out via the Penrose process. That's roughly the idea. I want to ask about Gödel's incompleteness theorem and its relationship to physics. I don't think it has a relationship to physics, to be honest. I don't think it has anything to do with it because physics is not a formal system. You can use a formal system to do physics, but physics is not the formal system itself. At least I don't think that there's a good reason to think that. Why is the electromagnetic force carried by photons? It's not. Except if you think that virtual particles are real. So the electromagnetic force is carried by the electromagnetic field. Now, waves in the electromagnetic field are photons, but not all electromagnetic field configurations are photons. Can you give me some advice for aspiring theoretical physicists? Go to college, get good grades, go to office hours, do research. What's the speed of dark? Dark isn't a thing that's moving, so it doesn't really have a speed. What's the difference between an enzyme and a hormone? I see what you did there. Is the branching finite or infinite in many worlds? So branching is a subjective thing in many worlds. It's not like a thing that like has physical, like objective reality. It's a way of characterizing the way the world is in terms of some set of observables that you have. Are the underlying implications that a theory of everything is in fact impossible because of... No, I don't think that Gödel's incompleteness says anything about the existence of a theory of everything. What do you think about the two... Now, there is the underdeterminedness problem. That might be a roadblock for us finding a theory of everything. But no, Gödel's incompleteness has nothing to do with this, I don't think. Do you think there's credit to our universe being inside a giant black hole? No, not at all. It's not even a theory. It's not even a hypothesis. As light from a star spreads out and weakens, do gaps form between the photons? The best way to describe that situation is that they're not emitting individual photons from individual places. There are not individual photons streaming through space. What there are spherical waves that come out in all directions. And when you detect one of these spherical waves, you collapse the wave function of the photon, which is kind of spread out in a spherical way. And then it appears as if it's localized. But until it's measured, it's not really a localized thing. It's just the probability of finding it at any given place is smaller. Explain how is quantum entanglement and change by observation is related. They're not. They're not related. How old is the Earth? The Earth is around 4.5 billion years old. Can fluids have different masses and different mediums? Different masses can have, or different mediums can have different masses, if that's what you mean. Isn't dark nothing? Dark is the absence of light, unless you're talking about... Well, yeah. So dark isn't anything. It's not a thing that's moving. Is the theory of space being similar to fabric a one-to-one comparison? No, not at all. It's a very, very loose analogy. What is the God particle? Well, don't dead name it. Its name is the Higgs boson. The Higgs boson is it's another fundamental particle, or it's a fundamental field rather, or it's an excitation of a fundamental field, making it a fundamental particle. And what that means is that it is like an intrinsic part of the world that we live in. Now, what it does, well, the field, not the particle, the field is the thing that everything with mass interacts with. And by interacting with it, those things acquire mass. By the way, if you spam your question, I won't answer it. Is there a movie that best represents time travel that you like? No, there's not. How can you determine the mass of the planet from Earth? Well, you can look at its gravitational motion and things that are orbiting around it. How does light source have a shadow? Well, if the light source is dim, then the light source that it produces, and the light source is opaque, then it could cast a shadow if the surrounding area is even brighter. Why don't we know how gravity works? We do. We have a great theory of gravity. Is the fact that science now posits one-dimensional strings not evidence that God could be possible, as it's heading to Plato and Pythagorean philosophy now? It's not heading to Plato and Pythagorean philosophy, in the slightest. I have a friend doing a master's on nuclear physics and masters. Recently, he complained about AI use kind of taking over academic physics. What's your experience with AI in your line of work? I found it to be a pretty useful tool in some regards. Finding references is pretty useful. Kind of telling me what the canonical sources are for like a given field if I need to learn it. So like, hey, what's like the go-to pedagogical introduction to XYZ? And then it'll spit it out. It's pretty useful for that. What else is it useful for? It's also useful just to kind of like talk at it, just to bounce ideas if you're working on something alone. But if you're working on something with collaborators, then you don't need a chatbot to talk at. If I travel in time, wouldn't there be an excess in mass in the time I'm traveling to? When you travel forward in time, for example, traveling backward in time has a whole slew of problems. But if you travel forward in time, then that just means that your clock is ticking slower than everybody else's clocks. And that's the thing that can happen. There's no issue there. Are like SU3 or SU5 or U1 or mathematical objects or physical representations? So when you get the field theory, it's really hard to say like what things are physical and what things are not. I mean, like, of course, these are mathematical things. The question is what do they correspond to in the real world? And that's like kind of a philosophical question. We don't really have good answers for that, at least from physics. Not yet, anyway. While calculating center of mass of a point particle, do we have to conserve momentum and make the torque about every point to zero? Calculating center of mass of a point particle. Do we have to conserve momentum? So to calculate the center of mass of a point particle, all you have to do is integrate the mass, just the mass moment, right? So if you integrate the differential of the mass, if you integrate infinitesimal chunks of mass, you get the total mass. If you integrate the mass moment times, if you integrate like r dm, then you get the center of mass. Recently, the tired light theory has gained traction. If the theory is true and redshift theory is incorrect, do you also believe that debunks the Big Bang theory? Well, sure, it would be the case, but the tired light theory has not gained traction. It's not being taken seriously amongst academic scientists. Does life need time to exist? Well, probably. If only because life is like a process, right? It's not like a thing, it's a process. So is mass really relative? Rest mass isn't. There's not really any other good notion of mass besides rest mass, so I would say no. Do you have any astro colleagues who are intrigued by the punches being thrown at Lambda CDM recently? Not that I've heard of. People are still skeptical, which is reasonable. Do you have a theory for why the shape of the universe exists in 3 spatial dimensions rather than 2 or 4 spatial dimensions? Well, there is a good reason to think that the universe should be even-dimensional. And that's for like even-dimensional in space-time, and that's for simplicity reasons. So maybe that explains why not 2 and 4. But other than that, we don't really have a good answer. From Nectu with the $5, if you really want Dr. Blitz to answer your questions, the best way to make that happen is with a super chat. That's true, and thank you, as always. How do you find the most up-to-date papers on a certain topic? Well, so the archive is a preprint repository, and you can just subscribe to it. And you can get updates every time somebody uploads a preprint to the archive in a certain large kind of category of papers. But otherwise, you just kind of have to use Google Scholar, or you can use ChatGPT. As long as you tell it to like do a web search, it might be able to find like the most recent papers. In an n-body problem, how would you properly consider all of the objects? I don't know what you mean by properly consider, but like you just write down Newton's laws, or write down the Newton's force equation for your n bodies, and then integrate step by step. There's not much to it. The TikTok physicist claims there's many dimensions of time. She claims like fractals opinion. I haven't seen her work. She says she's working on it. She has a PhD, so I trust that whatever she's doing, it's not completely nutso. And if it is, then it won't be accepted, and then she'll abandon the idea. Is there a general consensus on the timelines for the universe to end? Rip crunch? No, there's not. Or at least there is, but it seems like it's changing. Can physical constants be different at a great enough distance? I mean, in principle, it could be, but we haven't seen any of these, so I suspect not. If your perception of time is slower, do your cells share that perception and make you age slower? Yeah, so the point is the clocks that, like, everything runs on clocks. All of those clocks go slower. That's everything about you runs slower. What do I need to go into quantum gravity? Usually a PhD in theoretical physics. Have you ever worked on an applied physics problem? I mean, kind of engineering projects? No. What's quantum gravity? Quantum gravity is a kind of, it's like a field. It's like a subfield of theoretical physics where the people in the field are trying to figure out ways to describe gravity at a quantum scale. Do you think math is discovered or invented? I say it's invented, but that's just me. Thoughts on time being just a description of change through relative motion? Well, time is a description of change. That's one way it's a description of change for space-time events at the same location. And space is a description of change for space-time events at the same moment in time. Can a particle and an antiparticle form a like anti-tau neutrino and proton? No. So if you have a particle and its antiparticle, the total, like the sum of the quantum numbers of those two particles is 0. So whatever you end up with, whatever they combine to make, it also has to have a total quantum number of 0 for all of its quantum numbers. Because that's what it means for something to be an antiparticle. All of the quantum numbers are reversed. Is there any evidence that we aren't in a black hole? There's no evidence that we are in a black hole. So why was it posited that we live in a black hole? Because a computer scientist did a data analysis and wrote a paper, and he saw some strange data, which is definitely worth investigating. And then in his discussion section, he said one of the possible explanations is that we're in a black hole. And then he didn't offer how that's a possible explanation. And that's why people think that. But no, this is not something that people are, I mean, it's worth like looking at, but there's not, it hasn't gone past the shower thought stage. From Modman with the $2, how is quantum mass related to mass of objects? So when we say quantum mass, presumably you're talking about like the mass of the fundamental particles, like the mass of a quark or the mass of an electron. So the vast majority of the mass that makes up stuff, like you and me and the table and all these things, the vast majority of that mass doesn't come from the Higgs field. It doesn't come from the fundamental mass of particles, but it comes from the binding energy of protons and neutrons being like held together, the quarks inside of them being held together. And this is related to like the whole E equals mc squared thing. Like if the strong force, which is very strong, because it's so strong, the amount of energy that's involved in like the quarks, orbiting each other that make up a proton, those energies are so high that the most of the mass comes from the mass associated with that energy. How come evolution doesn't have to meet scientific method high standards? Who says it doesn't? Are we living in a marble bag from the movie MIB? I suspect not. Though time travel is possible, is it something that can be accomplished in this century? Future time travel is doable now. We're actually currently doing it. During a big crunch, will time appear to move backwards? In some models, yes. Are you optimistic about humans traversing the galaxy, let alone our own, or traversing the galaxies? No. What's the difference between a classical wave equation and a quantum field equation? So quantum fields at leading order will obey the classical equation, but then there's quantum corrections. And those corrections can basically be viewed as like nonlinear terms in the wave equation. His last response was no, Plato and Pythagoras didn't posit one-dimensional strings when they did. Not a worthy response. I won't be super chatting it for him. No, they didn't posit it. Well, no, the point is that the strings of string theory are not related to Plato and Pythagoras at all. Like Unless you think anything geometric is related to Plato and Pythagoras, but they're just unrelated ideas. From Mazen with the 5 British pounds, I have a bachelor's in theoretical physics. What do I need to go into quantum gravity or post-quantum encryption, and which field do you recommend? I think quantum gravity is more interesting than post-quantum encryption. And so you'll need a PhD in physics, almost entirely. So, you know, go get one, I guess. Do you believe quantum computing will reduce the need for scientists? No. It'll increase the need for scientists, definitely. Are you afraid of the possibility of afterlife? No. How does mass work since it's granted by the Higgs field? So mass isn't only due to the Higgs field, it's just the mass of fundamental particles is due to the Higgs field. So the mass of an electron is due to the Higgs field, the mass of a quark is due to the Higgs field. But the mass of a proton is not only due to the Higgs field. Like I just said, it's due to the interaction between the quarks. The strong nuclear force contributes so much energy that you know, from Einstein's E equals mc squared, that extra energy that it gets contributes most of the mass. Do you think that if all the elements of the set are contingent, then the set needs to be contingent? I think it depends. Dr. Blitz, how does a time-varying electric field give rise to a time-varying magnetic field, and is this how wave propagates? So the question of how, it's a law of physics. Maxwell's equations are laws of physics. So how does that work? Well, it's just what magnetic and electric fields do. That's not really a question that we have an answer for. But yes, that is how waves propagate. Yeah, electromagnetic waves propagate. Is the hard problem of consciousness evidence that awareness may be fundamental, since that hypothesis predicts and expects a hard problem of consciousness? Perhaps, but it's not particularly compelling evidence, because in some sense, the hard problem of the idea that consciousness is fundamental in some sense is an answer to the hard problem of consciousness. So it's one of those things where, like, you have some observation, so you come up with a hypothesis that accounts for that observation. It's not like new evidence that's supported by that hypothesis, you know? Do you think technical analysis would be able to determine the future of the stock market? No, not really. Oh yeah, if you guys are watching on YouTube or on TikTok, make sure to like the live. Gets more people in here, better questions. And also, if you want to join, there is a link to a Discord, both in the description of the YouTube video and in the link tree in my bio, that if you want to go there, join the Discord. It's a great place to ask questions, interact with like-minded people. You should do that. Good community. What's your take on the Planck star theory, specifically being at the center of a black hole? I think it's a neat idea. As far as I know, we don't have any data supporting it yet. Is the strong force the only self-interacting force? Do you have an explain like M5 for how that works? No. Any non-abelian gauge theory, which the weak nuclear force is, self-interacts, or at least can self-interact. Do you have a PhD in theoretical physics by chance, and is your last name Freeman? Yes and no. I have a master's in theoretical physics. What did you do your PhD in? My PhD thesis was on conformal geometry with its applications to the ADS-CFT correspondence. Dr. Blitz, what is a white hole? How can such a thing be real? Well, as far as we know, they're not real. A white hole is basically what happens if you take a black hole and you put it in reverse. But yeah, we don't have any evidence that these things exist, because if they did, they'd be very, very bright, and we haven't seen them. Have you heard of the theory of eternalism? I'm familiar with the philosophical idea, yeah. Can you easily go from applied math undergrad to mathematical theoretical physics postgrad? Probably, but you still had some catching up to do with regards to the physics that you've done, I'm sure. Do you believe in the existence of dark matter? If yes, can we agree that we don't need to directly observe something that posits its existence, which would also apply to God? Yeah, sure. So dark matter, we have indirect evidence of it, and kind of evidence. What do you think about Nobel Prize in Physics gone for Geoffrey Hinton, the work related with AI, same as chemistry? I don't think that it's right. I don't think that's good. Your thought, $2 from Craig Hart, thank you. Your thought, Penrose's view on physics consciousness? I think he's wrong about it, basically. Like, or rather, let me rephrase. I don't think we have good reason to think that he's right. Is unitarity violated inside black holes? Hopefully not. Otherwise, we'd have a big problem. How hard was Physics 1 in undergrad? I had an easy time with it, but Physics 1 is not the weed out class, right? What's the closest thing that exists which could be said as black body radiation? Black holes. Black holes produce a, as far as we can tell, nearly perfect black body spectrum. Is it worth going into academia and physics? If you love it, you should. Yeah. I mean, but like, you're not going to make a lot of money doing it. Do you think we'll ever find a way to observe wave function collapse, and what would it mean for us? Maybe. It depends on what wave function collapse is, if it happens at all. Do you think we'll ever find a way to observe... Oh, I already answered that. How much chemistry was required for your degree before your PhD? I did no chemistry. I've never taken a chemistry class. Sadax, have you done PhD, sir? Yes, I have a PhD. I've had it for 3 years. Thoughts on creationism? It's not well supported. Is there faster travel than light? No, not unless you allow for matter that has negative mass. Any new developments in ADS-CFT? Anything potentially good recently? Probably. I just haven't been paying attention to it because I don't really do that kind of stuff anymore. Are today's scientists higher or lower on the gas can hobo... What? Can we agree that the Heisenberg uncertainty principle breaks the laws of thermodynamics temporarily? No. So the second law of thermodynamics is statistical. So it's not even a thing that applies to individual particles. The first law of thermodynamics is not broken by the Heisenberg uncertainty principle either, nor is the third. Do jobs pay well in the physics industry? I don't know. I've never been in the physics industry. Is there something real and fundamental, or is it just a side effect of how we experience? Is time something real or fundamental, or is it just a side effect of how we experience change? We don't know. We don't know even if space is fundamental. Does light have mass? It does not. Do you use AI in your work? For some things, like for like reference finding, primarily, and to like bounce ideas off of it sometimes. From Craig with the $2, predict the next breakthrough in physics. I'm going to be wrong, but nuclear fusion. Can we travel faster than light if negative mass exists? In principle, yeah. How did we measure the mass of the universe and its critical mass? So the critical mass comes from like kind of theoretical calculations. The mass of the universe, we basically calculated it from looking at how much matter there is, looking at how fast the universe is expanding, which contributes to the dark energy, and then adding those two things together. That basically gives you the mass. Why am I getting spam? I'm getting spam from Crocs. Sorry, one sec. Actually, sorry, I have to do something really quick. It's for a letter. They need my address for some reason, which I don't understand, but they do need it. All right. Do you think time moving forward is a result of the expansion of the universe, or vice versa? Kind of. I kind of think it does. I kind of think it is related. Yeah. What are the chances we find something beyond the standard model? I hope pretty high. I'm really interested in first order logic and proof theory. Do you think it's worth getting a PhD? Sure, why not? I mean, like, you're not gonna. It won't make you a whole lot of. It won't make you a whole lot of money. But yeah, why not? If we were to use a super telescope on Mars to observe Earth, how much of the past will we see? Like 15 minutes or something? Or 8 minutes, I think. Depends on what time of year it is. Does Heisenberg uncertainty principle work for a particle traveling at the speed of light observing another particle? Particles traveling at the speed of... So only light and gluons can travel at the speed of light, but even then gluons can't really. And Heisenberg uncertainty principle doesn't really have anything to do with observation, so I don't understand where you're going with the question. Can you give a physical intuition of how an atom emits a visible photon whose wavelength is, say, an order of magnitude larger than the atom size? So it's more that, so all that happens is that over a period of time, the electron disturbs the electromagnetic field. It disturbs the electromagnetic field at a particular frequency. And because light travels at the speed of light, the amount of time it takes for the frequency to undergo, say, one oscillation or one photon's worth of oscillation, that light wave will have stretched out significantly because it's propagating away from it. From fellow, delta E delta T is greater than or equal to 2 h bar means that for very short periods of time, the energy of a system can fluctuate as long as it's repaid within the allowed time. This violates the thermodynamics temporarily. No. So that's there. So that's not Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. There is no Heisenberg's uncertainty principle for energy. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle relates uncertainty in observables, and in quantum mechanics, time is not an observable quantity. It's not an observable operator. It's a varying parameter. So what you can do is there's something similar to it, which will tell you something about how averages will change, but it's never actually violating energy conservation. Do you think time travel is theoretically possible? To the future, yes. To the past, probably not. A black hole and an antimatter black hole collide. What happens? They become one big black hole. What part of physics is included in mathematical physics? It could be basically all of physics. It's just the way that you approach it is different. Is an electron's wave function oscillating over time, as in the probability of its particle being measured at any given location is changing over time? Not if it's undisturbed. If you're disturbing it, if there's like an ambient electric field that's changing, then sure, but generally no. How can virtual particles that don't really exist still create real forces like the Casimir effect? You don't need virtual particles to explain the Casimir effect. All you need is kind of like fluctuations in the location of charges in the conducting plates on the sides, and then from the electromagnetic forces alone, you get the attraction. Heisenberg principle depends on the number of electrons in atomic number. No, unrelated to that. What is the relationship between speed and gravity, given that they both impact time? There isn't like a direct relationship, only that things have more kinetic energy if they're moving faster, and if you have a bunch of things that are contained in a box all moving very fast, then it'll have more mass and that will create more gravity. $5 from the annoying anonymous. Thank you so much. I have a physicist friend who, what is a super hard question I can ask him to start a conversation? Ask him to derive from first principles the mass of a gluon. Sorry, derive from first principles the mass of a glue ball. If two items go towards each other at light speed from point A, point B is, then from point A, point B is traveling 2x. So things can't travel at the speed of light, at least not like objects with mass, but they can move really, really close. So if let's say that you have two places that are not moving relative to each other, and then an object leaves the first place at near the speed of light, 99% speed of light, and then an object leaves the second place at the same speed in the opposite direction. The gap between them will shrink at almost twice the speed of light. However, from each observer's point of view, nothing will ever be moving faster than the speed of light. Rather, the result of time dilation and length contraction will mean that they will observe the other one moving towards them at, again, very, very near the speed of light, but still not at the speed of light. And then from Tim for Peely with the $10, does your mathematician side ever spend any time thinking about unsolved math problems? Or do you consider that a waste of your processing cycles? There are not really that many big conjectures, like really like famous big conjectures in the area that I'm in, so I don't really think about those kinds of things, no. Can you repeat that about the glue ball? Yeah, ask him to derive from first principles the mass of a glue ball. Why didn't you take freshman chem organic and physical chem undergrad? Because it wasn't required for a physics major. Yeah, so I just didn't take them. Why would I? What's your opinion about anti-gravity propulsion systems and UVPs using element 115, aka moscovium? Element 115 is not special. It's not stable. There's no anti-gravity properties of it. Why is renormalization fully accepted? Isn't it a trick to handle infinity? Yeah, but it works. That's why it's accepted. Does light have mass? Light does not have mass, no. I'm defending my physics master's tomorrow. Any tips? Oh, good luck. I don't know if there's any tips I can give you that, yeah, I don't think that there's any tips I can give you that will actually help. I mean, Heisenberg uncertainty principle basically says that we can't find the precise locations of electrons, right? It's just probability. No, it's not that. It's that when you measure the location of electrons and then you measure the speed of electrons, the uncertainty that you have in one times the uncertainty that you have in the other must always be bigger than a certain number. Does existence of mass prevent exceeding or meeting the speed of light? Yes. What's your favorite pen to write things with? I use the Pilot G2. Ideally, it's the 10, but I also like the 07. The only way time travel could be possible would be to accelerate to 99.9% speed of light, so I don't think time travel is possible with our current understanding of the universe. Well, no, so future time travel is totally possible. Backwards time travel, not so much. So Blitz, going by your answer, you would need to propose that virtual particles are only a mathematical abstraction, don't actually exist. Yes, that is true. That is a true statement. There's no evidence that they physically exist, that they exist in any sense of the word. Rather, they are a way of mathematically expressing non-particulate field configurations. That's exactly what virtual particles are. Do you have tips for me? I'm majoring in math for my undergrad. Go to office hours, like lots. Why do we ignore the implicit assumptions Bell theorem? Everyone seems to gloss over the seemingly unscientific assumption of free choice by the experimenters. It's not that they need free choice, it's that they need to be uncorrelated. That's the important part. They need to be independent. Also, to say we don't need virtual particles for Casimir effects would then violate thermodynamics because the energy has risen without it. No. The energy still comes from the electromagnetic field, but it doesn't require virtual particles. This is like super, like, I mean, like, it's not talked about a lot because, you know, people, like, unless this is actually like your line of work, people kind of just accept what they're taught in grad school. But like, no, this is like well understood that there are completely consistent ways to talk about Casimir effect and all of quantum field theory without invoking virtual particles ever. It's like just a mathematical thing. From Forum Galorum with the $2, talk to me about the Oort Cloud. So the Oort Cloud is a hypothetical place surrounding our solar system. I say hypothetical because it's never been observed directly. However, we have evidence that it exists, or I should say, it's a hypothesis, let's say. We have evidence that it exists because we can see comets. These are called long period comets. And we can map out their trajectory and figure out that they spend most of their time really far away from the sun. And because they kind of come from all directions, we can infer that it's like roughly spherical surrounding the solar system. But we can't actually see anything there because, you know, it's too far, things are too dim. Do you think information is truly lost in a black hole, or do you think it's retrievable? I think it's retrievable. I think the information paradox has been resolved. Is momentum a form of mass? Is it associated with gravity? Momentum does contribute to gravity, but it's not a form of mass, no. What do you think about the emergent gravity concept? I think, so there's one version of it called entropic gravity, and I think that one's kind of like, not, kind of like on the ropes, if you will. Wouldn't photons moving against the direction of other photons be 2x the speed of light? Well, no individual photon is moving at the speed of light. It's just that the gap between them is growing at 2x the speed of light. But you can't like hop on a photon and look at the other one. Is time dilation the closest thing to traveling to the future? Yes. From Rich Jake with the $10, thank you. How long before physicists admit the quantum fields exist in and of themselves, and the 4D manifold called space-time meme is just an algorithm for predictions and not something the quantum fields exist in? Some people are already talking about this. This is like a thing that some people are taking seriously. Like Nima or Khani Hamed, as a good example. He's like kind of big on this. Is that why Halley's Comet never melts when it approaches the sun? Does it refreeze in the Oort Cloud? So Halley's Comet doesn't come from the Oort Cloud. Its period is too short. But there are other comets that we've only like seen once. But yeah. What physics mystery would be the first you to ask advanced aliens to show you the math for? Quantum gravity. It's got to be quantum gravity. Is relativity a product of the drag or friction of mass on space-time? No, there's not really a good like analogy that involves like mass or something like this. On YouTube, the chat covers your handsome face a bit. It's annoying. I'm sorry. But you're not here for my face, right? How much can we know about the hot dense state? Well, as our quantum field theory gets better, as we learn more and more about quantum gravity, ideally, we will learn more and more about it. Why is there more matter than antimatter? That is one of the biggest open questions. We just don't know the answer to it. I don't trust guys with feminine hair and voice tonality. Your low testosterone might be indicative of liberal tendencies. It's time to hit the I don't recommend this button. That's a weird take, but okay. Sorry you feel that way. You're in Diff Geo, right? Carathéodory conjecture. Yeah, I've thought about it, so I've looked into it. It's just not something that's interesting to me. When are you doing another flat Earth session? They're so fun. Maybe later this week. If momentum isn't mass, why does it contribute to E? Because energy is not just mass. There's energy, there's momentum. They both contribute to total energy, right? Do you think that physics is still a good degree to get? I mean, if you want to learn physics, you should, yeah. It's my birthday tomorrow. May I have a happy birthday? Happy birthday, Chris. What is the Yang-Mills mass gap? The Yang-Mills mass gap is a question, namely, what is the mass of a glue ball in quantum chromodynamics? Does every galaxy orbit a supermassive black hole? Most of them have supermassive black holes, but galaxies don't orbit the supermassive black hole. The supermassive black hole is like a tiny fraction of the total mass. So what's really happening is that the galaxy is orbiting its own center of mass. What are some places you use to find the recent credible academic studies published? I use the preprint archive, arxiv.org. It's where people upload their preprints. Any pets? I have a cat. Advice on first-time research on your own. Oh, it's hard. It's really hard. So what you should do is you should definitely have somebody advising you, ideally, an advisor, supervisor. Is he reading stuff from YouTube and Teach? No, it's YouTube and TikTok. How does entropy contribute to our observable universe? Well, we can measure entropy in a given volume. Although there is an issue with how to talk about the gravitational contributions to entropy, that's kind of tricky. From Elois, with the 25 Norwegian kroners, are charged black holes expected to exist or not? They're basically expected to not exist, at least not significantly charged black holes. Almost all of them will neutralize very quickly. And from Tacitus with the $10, opinion on if the universe is inside the singularity of a black hole, and the expansion is the growth of that black hole, and if the universe's particles are bigger. Yeah, so that's not true. That's not what the black hole universe hypothesis says. The black hole universe hypothesis, or shower thought, if you will, is that the universe is within the event horizon of a black hole, but it doesn't say anything about the expansion of our universe being the growth of that black hole. In fact, all of the analyses for a non-rotating black hole that I've seen assume that the black hole is static. It is unchanging in size. Is Big Bang truly the beginning of the universe? We don't know. What American colleges would you recommend for physics major for mediocre student from abroad? Oh, I don't know if you want to come to the US. Why do neutrinos pass so easily through solids? Because they don't have charge. The only thing that would stop them is like the charge of protons and electrons, but they don't have charge, so. Why can't an electron be confined inside the atomic nucleus? Well, you can find the electron inside the atomic nucleus, but in order for it to be there, there's an issue with angular momentum, right? Electrons have angular momentum. They have a minimum amount of angular momentum, in fact. And so you can't have, if they were there, then you would, well, okay, so if you treat the nucleus as a point, then they literally can't be there, right? It's like mathematical impossibility. If you treat it as a finite but small volume, then they can be. And we got 1,000, I want to say that's Indian rupees, but I'm not sure, but thank you. There was no question there. Our black hole is portal to another universe? No, probably not. Nectar, does he read comments? I just read your comment. Spontaneous symmetry breaking, could it happen again? How dead would we be? Probably not, because the universe is already pretty cold. If isolated matter-antimatter pair collide, what takes their energy away? Photons. It's photons. Do you think the guiding wave and pilot wave could be correlated with quantum entanglement? Well, yeah, that's how it's supposed to work. What math is used most? What math is most used on a day-to-day basis for your research? Perturbation, partial diff, others. It's mostly tensor calculus. So like the stuff that you learn in differential geometry class. I'm generally not solving equations. I'm kind of like expressing things in a new way and simplifying and. But sometimes I do some like pretty rudimentary differential equation stuff. if we can only say a particle is fundamental because we can't unpack it any further, how can we come to the conclusion that awareness is fundamental? Well, I mean, I suppose you could. The trouble is like, nobody can like give a good description of what awareness is or what consciousness is, right? Like, this is like all very vague stuff. And so, you know, whereas I can tell you exactly what an electron is, right? I can tell exactly what properties it has, what properties it doesn't have, for example. Do you think electric flux has a physical significance keeping its use on one side? I don't understand that question. Can you explain potential dimensions besides those we can experience? Well, they're just, if they exist, they'd just be additional spatial directions. But because we don't experience them, almost certainly, they're very, very, very small, curled up, tiny little things. So they wouldn't really affect us. If time slows at high speeds, why doesn't this apply a possible velocity of 0 with faster time and therefore imply an absolute space? Because it's relative. So like everybody is moving at 0 speed relative to themselves, right? So I'm moving fastest, and everybody else who's moving relative to me is moving, their time is moving slower. With $5 from Forum Galorum, the Mount Toba eruption is credited as a cause of temporary global cooling in a possible mass extinction event. How likely is this to happen again? I have no idea. You'd have to ask a volcanologist that question. You should debate with gas pressure too. I've debated with him so many times. We used to talk all the time. Can you talk about the idea behind a Calabi-Yau manifold? Yeah, so a Calabi-Yau manifold is a Kähler, even-dimensional Ritchie-flat manifold. Did I get that right? I think I got that right. And then I can explain all of those things. I just want to make sure I got it right. It's Ritchie-flat definition. No. It's okay. So those things are true, but it also has a global holonomy contained in SUN. So it's sort of complex. I do have a video on this from a while ago, but roughly speaking, it's a kind of like a higher dimensional version of a surface that kind of behaves like the complex plane, and also behaves as if it's kind of has like very simple curvature. It's really hard to explain without getting into the technical details, though. You can ask the same question, but wait a few minutes in between. Yeah, that's fine. How do you measure the temperature of a vacuum? Generally, you don't. Why does it take a long time for uranium to decay? Because it's pretty stable. Like, depending on how stable something is, it will either take longer or shorter to decay, right? If there are extra dimensions, is there energy in them? So energy is not like a thing that exists in places, right? Energy is a property of systems. So if there are systems in there that are moving, if there are systems in like the higher order dimensions, then yeah, they could have energy. Talk about the physical correlation between yourself and the guy whose dad worked for Blizzard. I don't know who you're talking about. Do you think the present exists, like time-wise? Well, I don't know if time is fundamental, but surely this moment of time exists insofar as time exists, and so does the future, and so does the past. Any new particles in the works? We still stuck with the Higgs field, right? Yeah, so as far as we know, the Higgs field is still fundamental, yeah. What are some elements more stable and some aren't? So iron is the most stable. Uranium's pretty stable. Uranium-238 is pretty stable. Moscovium's very unstable. So it just has to do with like how the nucleus is arranged and how much stuff is in there. You're driving at the speed of light. You turn on your headlights. Well, if you want me to answer with physics, I can't answer with physics because you can't drive at the speed of light. Be honest, does physics give potentially high income? If you go into physics expecting high income, that means that you're going into industry. He's not a physicist, maybe a student. I have a PhD in physics. Not a student anymore. I haven't been a student for 3 years. I got my PhD 3 years ago. Now I just do science communication and I do publications, and that's my job. Why would the universe be inside the event horizon, not the singularity? That's just not the idea. A singularity is like a single place. The universe is not one. The universe has the singularity would have 0 volume. The universe does not have 0 volume. Is energy eternal? Energy is not a thing. It's a property of things. Why has the US government suppressed and controlled physics so much? Money? I don't know if it has. Have you seen the recent exploration of spin-polarized tritium as more effective nuclear fusion fuel? I haven't. Is there any explanation for why gravity is the only unidirectional force? In some sense, it's because it's a rank 2 tensor. It's governed by rank 2 tensor rather than by a vector, but that's not really a satisfying answer. What happens to an electron's wave function when it drops down in energy level during stimulated emission? I have a hard time visualizing what actually happens. So you can actually check this, and this is a calculation that you'll do in a quantum mechanics course if you've taken one, is so electrons in any orbital, electrons are completely stable. Let's take a hydrogen atom, right? The electron in any orbital of the hydrogen atom is completely stable. However, any small perturbation can allow the electron to decay. And then you can calculate the transition, and basically what happens is if the electron is fully in one orbital at t equals 0 and fully in the other orbital at t equals 1, then what happens is that it just goes like this. It just, so like in the middle bit, it's in a superposition. Will a sophon ever be a real thing? I've never heard of that. We got a $5 gift from Yoshkin on Buy Me a Coffee. Is it true that black holes with massive observable universe would have event horizon of observable universe? No. No, that's not true. The mass of the observable universe is far, far, far larger because there's dark energy, right? But I appreciate the $5 gift. That was thought back in the 70s before we knew what dark energy was. And even then it wasn't quite right, but anyway. Why, when an astronaut in orbit is weightless, even though Earth's gravity is still acting on him? So they're not weightless. What they are is they are in free fall. So free fall is what we think of as weightless, namely like you don't fall down. But the only reason why being in free fall seems like weightlessness from like videos is because everything is free falling at the same rate. Yes, quantum entanglement plays a role in consciousness. Everyone knows that. Microtubulus cilia. Well, no, that has not been proven. Not everybody knows that. Is it possible to energize photons in a black hole ergosphere? It's not really easy to like add energy to photons. What is a boson? A boson is a type of particle that has a certain amount of angular momentum. It has an integer spin angular momentum rather than half integer spin angular momentum. And what that means is that as a result of the spin statistics theorem, bosons can overlap with each other. Fermions can't. $2 from Rob. Thank you for the $2, Rob, as always. $2 from Forum Galorum. The Higgs boson is called the God particle. Why? Because people latched onto the title of a book. So in the 90s, I want to say, a physicist named Leon Letterman wrote a book about the God particle, about the Higgs, or it was called the God particle, about the Higgs boson, about how hard it was to find and how important it was. And originally he was going to name it the goddamn particle, but the publisher didn't like having a swear word in the title, so they agreed on the name the God particle. Has nothing to do with, and the only reason it was called the goddamn particle was because it was so hard to find, because they'd been looking for it for 50 years, or at that point they'd been looking at it for 20 years. If you spam, not only will I not answer your question, you will get a 5-minute mute. Can you explain superdeterminism in simple terms? Yeah, it's basically that the universe is conspiring. The universe is deterministic, and it's conspiring in such a way that that what we think are quantum mechanical correlations that are hard to explain are actually just coincidences, basically. That's the idea. What was the hardest part about getting into academia? Probably the getting into academia part, getting jobs and stuff. Currently, I'm working for myself. I can fund my own research doing science communication. Can you explain the W plus W or W minus and Z bosons? I know they're carriers of the weak and strong force. So they're not carriers of the strong force. They're carriers of the weak force. The weak force has 3 bosons, one neutral one and two charged ones. So the Z boson kind of behaves like a photon. So the Z boson will cause things to be attracted or repelled from each other. W plus and W minus bosons, because they're charged and charge has to be conserved, they kind of transmute particles. So they like will turn electrons into neutrinos. So in that sense, they're less like forces that push and pull, and more like alchemy. From Strange Cork with the 3 Australian buckaroos, is mathematical analysis necessary for physics? Depends on the physics you're doing, but it very much can be, yeah. Can you explain why the gravity at the center of the Earth is not infinite? Why would it be? So gravity means that you're being, the strength of gravity is how strong you're being pulled in a given direction, but at the center, you're not being pulled in any direction, because it all cancels out. Would seeing the future violate the second law of thermodynamics? Seeing the future in the present? Maybe, but I haven't thought about that. Is there any chance in your mind that aliens might exist due to the sheer vastness of the universe? Oh yeah, probably. That seems super plausible. If you're self-funded, not associated, so I still have a university association with at the place I did my postdoc. I still have a university affiliation just because I know what academia is like. They're just not funding me. Is it possible to submit papers to regular journals? Yeah, I did it like 3 weeks ago. What do you consider the most promising explanation for dark matter and dark energy? So dark energy, I have no idea. Dark matter, heavy particles, maybe sterile neutrinos. Are we inside a black hole that's larger inside than out? No, I don't think so. Have you been checked for Marfan syndrome? I haven't, but I don't think I have the symptoms for them. Should peer reviews be paid? Probably, yeah. How does propulsion work in a vacuum? Well, you turn on a rocket, the rocket shoots stuff out the back, and that shoots you forward. Are you enjoying this fire hose of questions? Yeah, generally. Normal physics breaks down past a certain size point leading to quantum physics. I wouldn't say it's normal physics breaks down, it's just not applicable. You're talking about classical physics, though. Is there a point on the other end where classical physics stops working on extragalactic scales? Well, yeah, if by classical physics you mean Newtonian physics, then, I mean, yeah, like, we have to take into account relativity when we're start talking about, like, cosmic scales, yeah. Why are imaginary numbers so useful in physics when they don't exist in reality? Well, what numbers do exist in reality? Is there a push power somewhere in our universe, like inverse to how gravity works? Yeah, that's what dark energy is supposed to be. It's pushing our universe apart. Would it be silly to think of gravity as the conservation of information? Maybe not, but I don't think that you can derive information purely from information theoretic studies. If the gravity is so strong in a black hole that light cannot escape, this would mean that light is being accelerated faster than the black hole speed of light, faster than the speed of light while being sucked into a black hole. So acceleration doesn't have a speed, right? What's really happening is that the gravity is so strong in a black hole, gravity being the curvature of spacetime, that the outward direction warps so much that it becomes inward. And so there's just no way for a photon, for a beam of light to travel outward. Have you met any famous physics professors from India? No, I haven't been to India. Gravity is so weak compared to other forces. Why does it dominate the universe? This is a good question. Roughly, it's because all of the other forces are so strong that they essentially cancel themselves out. And because gravity doesn't have like a negative and a positive that can cancel out, gravity is always attractive, it becomes the dominant force. There's no cancellation of gravity, even though there is cancellation of electromagnetism. If there was a bunch of uneven distribution of charges or electromagnetic fields in the universe would, like, because those forces bring like charges together which cancel out electromagnetic fields, those electromagnetic fields would eventually like cancel themselves out. If Hawking radiation equals virtual particles falling in and escaping, why does that lead to less mass? Hawking radiation is not about virtual particles. Virtual particles are made up nonsense. Could black holes be a space of temporally preserved coherence? I don't know what that means. This is a silly question. I just watched Ant-Man. How accurate, inaccurate is the representation of quantum mechanics? Oh, it's complete fabrication. Can a free electron emit light upon acceleration? Yes. What happens to the electron after emission? It slows down. Or rather, its acceleration isn't as effective as you would have thought it would have been. Is relativistic gravity not simply the effects of electromagnetism? No, it's not. No, we can isolate away the electromagnetic effects and account for any residual electromagnetic effects and show that gravity is a purely mass or energy or momentum-based effect, yeah. How far fast would a human need to travel and then return to Earth to meet themselves? You can never turn around and meet yourself. Doesn't work. I still think that light is traveling faster than the speed of light near a black hole. Light, if you are if you're moving, if you're not accelerating, if you're not, exerting a force on yourself, or if something's not exerting a force on you, then from your perspective, light will always move at the speed of light. Always. In a vacuum. Is a spinning black hole significant in physics, or is it just a YouTube buzzword for videos? Most black holes are spinning. If you had unlimited funds, what experiments would you run? I would build a particle accelerator the size of the solar system. Do you have any coping methods or advice for dealing with the slow weight of peer review? It is frustrating, but you kind of just have to put it aside and work on other stuff. Fear's interaction with the $10. I was frozen to absolute zero. Now I'm okay. Do you have a favorite physics joke? Yes, I do have a favorite physics joke. It's also my wife's favorite physics joke. I've told it before. What's the difference? Or, sorry, what do I and a trillion neutrinos have in common? We're both constantly penetrating your mom. Anyway, that's the best physics joke. It's a your mom joke. It's childish, so sue me. Why is a black hole spin not measured in RPM? It's not a particularly useful metric because it's better to just talk about its angular momentum, right? Wife, isn't he like 25? I'm 32. Also, I was married when I was 25. Can you describe why perturbation theory is not very effective in non-adiabatic systems? Perturbation theory is not very effective in non-adiabatic systems. Oh, because typically so in adiabatic systems, you can treat them as basically kind of always being at some sort of equilibrium. And in perturbation theory is perturbing about an equilibrium, perturbing about some stationary state. And so perturbation theory is going to give you trouble if you're not hanging out near equilibrium during the process, right? Can you tell me why we can't look ahead and only behind us? You can do both. What? What kind of physics do you do? I want to try to get into galactic particle physics. I do mostly relativity stuff. I dabble in some quantum gravity, dabble in some cosmology. I don't know why I look so young. I don't think I have any filters on. Will Hawking radiation be the last form of energy present at the end of the universe? Yes. Well, okay, it depends. If a heat death happens, then yeah, basically. How can time be considered its own dimension? Well, if you want to tell somebody how they can attend your party, you have to tell them where you are and when it'll be. So that's 4 numbers they have to give them. Your longitude, your latitude, east, west, north, south, your altitude, what floor you're on, and then what time it is. It's 4 numbers. It's 4 dimensions. What's the difference between quantizing a particle in quantum mechanics and quantizing a field in QFT? Oh, QFT is just a lot harder. That's what. It's just a lot more complicated. If it takes 9 days for a bronze anvil to fall to Earth from heaven, how much mass does it have? It shouldn't depend on the mass. How does superposition and quantum mechanics work together? So superposition is just the thing that waves do. For example, when you play a chord on a guitar, or on any instrument, I guess, what the sound waves are doing is they're in a superposition of several different sound waves. Now, the way that we describe quantum systems is via waves. It's via a wave equation, Schrodinger's wave equation. And so you can have a superposition of the waves that solve your equation. And that's what, and quantum mechanics is about solutions to that equation. So yeah, of course you're going to have superposition. The question is what does that mean then? From Sable Jupiter with the $10. Sorry about spamming. Here's a donut. I appreciate you. Love your work. Just curious about phase space, what's derivable from it, whether that is all of classical mechanics, electromagnetism, thermodynamics, etc., just observables. So phase space is it's essentially position of momentum. And the reason why it's useful is because you can, it's kind of like the mathematical version of, or it's the mathematical space where you can do Hamiltonian mechanics. And so basically all of classical physics is derivable from using kind of a phase space formalism. And you can even do some quantum mechanics from it as long as you kind of like adjust it. It's called phase space quantization. Now, there's other ways that you can do phase space on electromagnetism, and then you'll just have, it's just, because you're talking about fields, the phase space becomes infinite dimensional. So, but yeah, phase space is like a really strong mathematical formalism that can package a lot of different ideas. Earlier you stated that energy is not a thing, so light is not a thing. Well, light isn't energy. Light is a thing that has energy. Light is a perturbation of the electromagnetic field, which is a thing. Why can't we fully describe larger atoms? Is it computational limitations or something else? Well, there's no closed form solutions because these are many body problems, like the 3-body problem. So we can't like write down a closed form solution. And so it's just a matter of doing numerical approximations. And that's hard. And you need really, really good computers or really, really clever methods. My glorious king and leader, should I major in physics? Yes. Yes, my subject. Is it actually possible to slingshot a ship around the sun? If it is, how fast could it possibly go? So gravitational slingshots are definitely a thing, but it's only useful if you're not already in orbit around the thing that you're gravitationally slingshotting off of. So if you're already in the solar system, like orbiting the sun, then no, not really. Although you can use the Oberth effect, which is not a gravitational slingshot, but it's related. You can use the Oberth effect to get a boost from the sun's gravitational pull. Hello there, we all know about 3D objects. What do we know about 4, 5D, and more? Well, we know a lot about like the geometry of such objects if they existed, but we don't have any evidence that they exist. How do entangled particles communicate? They don't. They're just not individual particles. When we say that 2 particles are entangled, what we really mean is that there's one quantum system that if you don't look too closely, looks like 2 separate particles, but it's just one thing. Got a question. Could a black hole have something solid in there, but we can't see it because light can? There is this idea that there could be like a solid core to a black hole about in some phase of matter that we don't understand. How do you reconcile the apparent conflict between general relativity and quantum mechanics when it comes to describing space-time at the Planck scale? You're asking me to solve quantum gravity. And the answer is nobody knows how to do that precisely yet, but there are ways that you can like try to do it. But yeah, nobody knows. This is an open question. I don't know if this is your field, but do you know what we'd see if decay rates were to have changed to fit young Earth creationism? Yes, I've done the calculation myself. The Earth would be like 5,000 degrees. Because if the decay rates were small, if the decay rates changed so that it could fit young Earth, and if we made it maximally beneficial for the young Earth creationist case so that everything decayed at the very beginning and Earth has had time to give off that energy ever since, having all of the decayed uranium that must have decayed to get to where we are now in, you know, the amount of time that we've had would have basically liquefied the Earth, and then it would have stayed, like, basically liquefied the Earth for the last few thousand years. So no, it doesn't work. Not a physics question, but could we breed chickens backwards into a T-Rex? I have no idea. Let's not, though. Is space-time the emergence of quantum physics? Maybe it's an open question. People are studying that. Do you recommend taking linear algebra and Calc 3 before Physics C? It will definitely help. Is the Earth 6,000 years old or 4 billion? It's about 4.5 billion years old. The US needs you to educate future science communicators. Look, I'm doing my best. Are you a Feynman fan? He was a really brilliant physicist. Wasn't a great person, though. Why does the vacuum state in QFT have a non-zero energy? Because the way that we build the vacuum in the QFT is by a sum of many harmonic oscillators, and those harmonic oscillators, being harmonic oscillators, can't have zero energy each, because if they did, then that would violate the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. So it's the sum of an infinite number of harmonic oscillators, each of which have a non-zero amount of energy. Is Neil deGrasse Tyson a fraud? No. What's the difference between a cosmic being and a god? Well, I don't know what either of them are. Is quantum physics purely physical? I don't know what that means. Like, yes, it's a physical science. It's part of physics, which is physical. What, in your opinion, is the most misunderstood concept in modern physics? Anything about quantum mechanics? What's Hooke's law? Hooke's law is that for an ideal spring, the force is proportional to the distance the spring is stretched. What do you think of Gregory Mihalik's trispace theory? I've never heard of it. Favorite field of mathematics? I like differential geometry. That's basically what I do. That's kind of like that's my toolbox that I use primarily. What do you think is the most promising approach right now? String theory, loop quantum gravity, or something else entirely? I'm agnostic about it. I don't know if there is a most promising approach that currently exists. If black holes bend space and time, the middle infinitely dense, wouldn't that imply time is happening all at once? I studied law, but these subjects have always interested me. If black holes bend space and time, the middle infinitely dense. So we don't know if the middle is infinitely dense. We don't know if a singularity actually exists. But at the singularity, time stops, at least for a non-rotating black hole. So there's just no time at all. How long did it take for you to get your PhD? 4 years of undergrad, 2 years of master's to ascend to PhD candidacy, and then 5 years of PhD. This physicist thinks light stops when it hits something. Well, it's absorbed. It doesn't stop. The light doesn't stop. It's absorbed and then ceases to exist. Is differential geometry the primary field of mathematics and mathematical physics? No, not necessarily. A lot of people do like algebraic geometry and stuff like that. Do you do vids promoting Nazis and their novel prizes? Well, I did make a video about a Nazi who won a Nobel Prize because he won a Nobel Prize, and I'm making a video about all of the physics Nobel Prize winners. But I definitely was very clear about the fact that, like, I didn't even show any of his pictures because I don't think that we should be, that we need to be remembering his face. I don't think that his face needs to be marked on history, right? So I don't know how you viewed that video as me promoting a Nazi rather than just talking about what a Nazi did and what he won that Nobel Prize for. But it just seems like that's like a super bad faith question. Do you think anyone can become a physicist? I mean, in principle, sure. Will the three-body problem never have a closed solution? I suspect it will never have a closed solution, yeah. In fact, I think it's kind of been proven that it doesn't. Thoughts on theism? I'm not a theist, I'm an atheist. How did the Voyager survive the extreme heat of the heliopause? It's very, very sparse, so there's not a whole lot of energy there for Voyager to absorb. Sorry. At the highest level of science, what is the difference between math and physics? Well, math is concerned with what could be and what is true given a certain set of rules. Physics is about what is. Is there anything concrete that's been discovered about quantum physics, or is it impossible to define things concretely like in regular physics? Yeah, lots of, like all of quantum physics is concrete. It's about like measurements. Quantum physics is about the outcomes of measurements. If time stops at the singularity, hypothetically, but time goes on outside of that, wouldn't that mean that the singularity is in the past and outside is in the present future? There's not really a well-defined notion of saying this is in the present or this is in the future. There is nothing to the future of the singularity for a static, non-rotating black hole. Nothing happens after it. Are Are you allowed to question the existing hierarchy of physics holy order? I don't know what that question means. What happens to time in a rotating black hole? So a rotating black hole, again, if it's a stationary rotating black hole, meaning that it's like unchanging in time, then there's something called like the maximal continuation. So then you could say that there is like an infinite future inside the rotating black hole that takes you in and out of different universes, but that's like probably a purely mathematical construct and probably is not how actual black holes exist, because actual black holes are not eternal. They are not stationary. They change over time. So what is the most abrupt change in gravity that can occur? It would probably be like a head-on collision of two black holes. That would be my guess. Do we even know anything about physics? We know plenty about physics. How far do you think the holographic principle applies outside ADS spacetimes? I'm not sure, but some people are convinced that it applies even to flat spacetimes, but it's really tricky to make it apply to de Sitter spacetimes. How do you measure curvature? I mean, like, it depends on what scale. So on the scale of the universe, it's kind of hard to do because you can't just go out and measure things. But the way that you could do it is you can measure things like deflections of light beams, for example, like deflections of stars. That's an indication of curvature, and so on. Hey, I'm also in school for physics. I'm not in school for physics. I'm assuming you did theory rather than experimental physics. Why'd you pick theory? Oh, I just like it more. Is it possible to actually predict things in higher dimensions? Well, as far as what are you predicting if we have no evidence that higher dimensions exist? Who's your favorite scientist? Mine is Michael Faraday. It's probably got to be Einstein. He was like the GOAT. Any cool earthy examples of red or blue shifting? Yeah, you can actually show gravitationally that light redshifts as you go higher, or that the light redshifts as it goes higher in altitude. You can show this experimentally. It's been done on Earth. Is the fourth dimension time or just another spatial dimension? Is it time? What's the fit? So our universe is a four-dimensional space-time. That's how we describe it mathematically. So one of the four dimensions is temporal one, and the other three are spatial. What do you think about the two black holes that collided? We've seen a lot of these at this point. That wasn't my dryer, that was my wife's alarm clock. What do you think caused the CP violation? Well, generally in quantum field theory, if something is allowed, it happens. Einstein was a Christian? No, he wasn't. What? He was Jewish, and he was also an atheist. Did I just lose connection? Oh, okay. Is redshift the visual version of the sonic Doppler effect? Yes. Is there any connection between Gödel's incompleteness theorem and the Heisenberg uncertainty principle? No, not at all. How long have you been a physician? I'm not a physician, I'm a physicist. Different words for different things. What made you get into physics so much? Black holes. Black holes were so cool. Wasn't Einstein a pantheist? Maybe. You could say that he maybe adopted Baruch Spinoza's view of God, which is like atheism with extra steps. What's your view about infinite universe or single universe? Doesn't this question feel intuitive that there are infinite universes? Maybe there are. Maybe there aren't. I mean, so Einstein certainly didn't believe in a God with a mind. Let's put it that way. Now, if he believed in some like ultimate order for the universe, that's consistent with atheism. Spinoza wasn't a Christian. Spinoza was also Jewish. What? His name was Baruch. He was a Spanish Jew or a Dutch Jew. What? What are you doing? Can you explain Spinoza's God further? How is it different from God as the material universe? That's my understanding is it's basically that. You're not a doctor? Well, the PhD after my name says otherwise. Tesla thought Einstein was a buffoon. Okay, Tesla also married a pigeon. Is it acceptable to be a physicist and a Christian from your point of view? Yeah, of course. It's fine. You're allowed to be a Christian. I remember you telling me that the Big Bang isn't a theory for creation. Can you expand on that? Yeah, so the Big Bang is a description of an evolution process, or like a change over time. It describes the universe as, 13.8 billion years ago being very, very small and very, very hot, and then expanding over the next 13.8 billion years up until now. It doesn't say anything about whether that was the beginning or not. I'm sorry, Tesla did what with the pigeon? Yeah, Tesla married a pigeon. Not a doctor like, is there a doctor on the planet? Yes, of course. Doctor like knows how the engine works, right? That kind of doctor. What is meant by vacuum degeneracy? Well, you can have two different vacua that have the same energy level, in which case it's a vacuum degeneracy. Einstein married his cousin. That he did. In fact, for most of human history, that's been, I guess, a pretty normal thing. We don't think of it as normal today, and I think it's kind of gross, but I guess it was normal like 100 years ago, 150 years ago. It's weird, but I don't know. Like, it was consensual, I guess, right? You once said you were leaning toward the universe having no start or end. Do you have a reason on why time still affects the universe and how it does not decay into nothingness? Well, look, you can have a universe with no start and no end without having a heat death. That doesn't follow. I really want to hear your take on the scientific explanation for love. I'm not a neuroscientist, so meh. Darwin married his first cousin too. Yeah, I mean, like, and like kings and queens did this too. Like, I don't know. I think it's kind of gross nowadays, but like, I don't know. I guess that was more considered normal back then. Make of that what you will. Do you think the theory of everything exists? I hope so. That'd be really great. If we record a double slit experiment but never watch the video, will the video still have interference? Yeah, according to like the mainstream understanding of quantum mechanics, yes. Blitz, do you believe that something isn't alive can become alive? Yeah, sure. Alive is just a certain kind of chemical process, right? How much water do I put with my rice, my scientist? Well, so in the rice cooker, you put in a certain number of cups, and then you just fill up the water to the line. Yeah, I married my first wife too. Could you please explain the application of Gauss's law? Gauss's law is just a way of relating flux to, or rather Gauss's law is a math thing, right? It's a way of relating flux to a volume density, or to a volume, basically. It's just, yeah, it's a math equation. Or you're talking about the electrostatic thing. Gauss's law for electrostatics just tells you how much charge there is in the interior of a surface is related to how much the electric fields pass through the surface. Christians mocking Einstein and Darwin about marrying his cousin while forgetting that the Bible tells us we're all inbred from only two people. That's fair. Nothing comes from nothing. Okay, yeah, I agree. I tend to agree. Wasn't normal to marry your cousin even 500 years ago? I mean, I actually think that's just like empirically true. Like, if by normal we mean like typical, then I think it's just true that like it was typical back then. Because like communities were a lot smaller and people knew a lot fewer people knew a lot fewer people who were not in their family. Just because people didn't travel as much, right? Have you looked into gravitational waves emitted from small black holes orbiting larger black holes? I haven't. I'm sure somebody has. Can the holographic principle apply in de Sitter space or only ADS? People are struggling, like, the hope is to get a version of the holographic principle for de Sitter space, but I don't think that it's been worked out yet. When does physics become chemistry? When you have more than two atoms. No, but jokes aside, it's a gray area, right? What's the most fascinating theory right now in physics and most tough one? That's subjective, man. What do you think of the theory of quantum immortality? I think it's nonsense. You are not all of you, you are one of you. Do you not do debates with Ian anymore? My schedule changed when I moved, so I'm working most of the time when Ian's live. But I sometimes hop in and I'm usually listening, and I'm usually like if you hear Discord notifications go off while Ian is live, it's usually me, especially when Ian is talking about like physics or something, it's usually me feeding Ian information. Do you think we should be spending more on discoveries in our solar system or outside our solar system? I think they're both useful. I did not realize Einstein was an atheist. He said things like God doesn't play dice. Am I missing something? So people like back then used the word God kind of like not metaphorically, but kind of like poetically. So like the implication there is God, or Einstein's view was that the universe wasn't random. But like we have like letters that Einstein wrote where he said, yeah, you know, the idea of God is naive, it's childish, religion is silly. Like we have like his own writing saying this. So can you find the mathematically most efficient and strongest way to hit a baseball? I'm sure somebody has. It seems complicated though. Why does increasing the size of the collider give us more information? It's not that it gives us more information, it's that it gives us more energy, right? It allows us to accelerate the particles to higher and higher energies, which means that we can probe smaller and smaller things. I thought Einstein said he believed in the God of Spinoza. He said that what he believed in was similar to that, but like the God of Spinoza is basically atheism. I mean, like, and we can fight on that, but like it's definitely not like a mind that created the universe, right? What do you think is more fundamental, space or time, and why? I think that they're equally fundamental. Is there anything about physics that you just don't understand? A lot of condensed matter theory is beyond me. How do you tell a physicist he's actually not that smart? I don't know, just tell him, I guess. But I mean, on average, like if you're a physicist, like you have to have a pretty good working knowledge of physics, which is not easy, right? I used to hate physics because my teacher when I tried studying by myself, it's very interesting. Okay, cool. How do you tell a fishy's wet? For $2 from Cody, how did we get the Big Bang from quantum fields? Oh, that's a hard question. We don't know. Planning to get a PhD in physics, but I hate geometry. Is physics mainly number-based or geometry? It depends on what physics you do. In some sense, you could say all of physics is geometry, but that's a personal view. With $2 from Shopkeeper, can you explain the Big Bang Theory in depth? Yeah, the idea is roughly, it's fairly straightforward. The idea of the Big Bang Theory is that about 13.8 billion years ago, the universe was very small and very hot. The observable universe was very small and very hot. And it was expanding and cooling down. And the Big Bang Theory tells us kind of like the rate at which it was doing this and the consequences of the expansion and what was happening as it was cooling down. It's like all of those things. And then from Veer's interaction with the $10, loved your sick physics joke. Here's $10 more. I appreciate you. Thank you. Regarding the particle wave duality, the particle view is just a model. True for wave 2. It's hard to say. Can you technically beat Roulette with physics? Maybe with a supercomputer. Do you believe the universe is super deterministic? I hope not. Will current be induced in a satellite having a metallic structure revolving around Earth along the equator by the Earth's magnetic field? I think I've actually heard of this happening. So, I think so, but I'd have to double check. Big Bang is not the start of time. Is that proven? The Big Bang is quiet about whether time began. On your physics joke, you and neutrinos penetrate our machine field. Oof. Oof. That's good though. Could Jupiter fuel the sun if we learn to bend space-time feeding it to the sun? I guess, but why would you want to do that? Weird. Do you think there was quantum fields before the Big Bang? Probably. Did you see the recent research paper on time dilation that built on Einstein's work? No, I don't. That's super vague. So many things build on Einstein's work. What is the CKM matrix? The CKM matrix basically tells you how different quarks mix into each other. How would buoyancy force change if water could be compressed? It would just make the buoyant force stronger. What does it mean for a field to be gauge invariant? It means that if you do a gauge transformation, the field doesn't change. How's the research world been in the US? So the US is still like the hub of research, but, you know, who knows if that'll stay the case. All right, y'all. We have been live for an hour and a half. I'm going to end the live because I want to go get some coffee. So if you guys want to get notifications about when I'm live more frequently, about when I post videos, make sure to join the Discord. There's a link in the link tree in the description of the YouTube video that you're watching on. There's a link in the description of the YouTube video you're watching on. Or if you're watching on TikTok, you can go to the link tree in my bio and you'll see a link to a Discord channel. You'll just have to copy and paste it into a browser. Clicking on it doesn't work most of the time. But yeah, so that's a good way to join and ask questions, talk with like-minded people, get announcements about when I go live, when I send out, when I post videos. So, I will see you guys tomorrow for some more debate content. Until then, though, take care, everybody.